So we continue with this series of lectures on 4 great vows. I spoke about 4 methods of traction of sentient beings and 4 Brahma viharas. Last talk, I spoke about that in general from the perspective of Mahayana Buddhism. In certain forms of Buddhism, the 4 immeasurable minds, Brahma viharas, are understood as supporting methods. They're not really main methods. They're presented as methods that you can rely on and cultivate when things are tough, when circumstances call for that. But they themselves don't lead to liberation. 4 immeasurable minds. In the Mahayana tradition, they're actually the ingredients of liberation. It's very different. Why? Because they relate to sentient beings. And they relate to working with people. So loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And I basically used the Vimalakirti chapter 7 to unpack these 4. Do you remember that? Yeah. So chapter 7 in the Vimalakirti Sutra, Manjushri Bodhisattva, the embodiment of wisdom, asked Vimalakirti, how should Bodhisattva practitioners regard sentient beings? So Vimalakirti basically says, like a phantom, like tracks of a bird path, not like a jet plane. It leaves a track, like birds, right? Like the 6th skanda. There's no 6th skanda. Like the 13th dependent origination link, things that don't exist. In other words, the wisdom of emptiness. That's how practitioners, bodhisattvas, regard sentient beings. That's only half of the story. And Vimalakirti says, well, if you do that, how are you going to save all beings? How are you going to generate compassion? Right? And then Vimalakirti goes on to talk about 29 different compassions practices. The things that he listed, 29, are in contradistinction to how we relate to sentient beings. Yeah. So usually loving kindness refers to the bestowing of happiness, the bringer of joy and happiness to people. Compassion is the removal of suffering. So these 2 are 2 sides of the same coin. You can't just have one. So these 29 deals with both, actually. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that, if possible. We'll just pick out a few. So let me read you some of them. So Manjushri says, if a bodhisattva looks upon sentient beings in this way, how in the world is he going to generate compassion? And then Vimalakirti says, when the bodhisattva has finished regarding them in this way, so there's a sequence, you see, regarding sentient beings as constructs. And the way that I taught it last talk is that they're literally constructs. Like the Guo Gu that you see in your mind is completely yours. Why? Because your brain has never left your skull, has it? It's electrical signals. So the Guo Gu that you see is actually a mental representation. It's yours. It's generated by you. So each one of you see Guo Gu differently. It's literally yours. It doesn't actually exist outside yourself. There may be a Guo Gu outside, I think, right? But it's not the one that you're seeing, right? So whatever you're experiencing, even touch, electrical signals, smell, electrical signals, everything that you experience is your construct. Literally, it's empty of substance. Literally. So in that sequence of learning to relate to the people around us, the things that we have to do, that's only half the story. I also mentioned the bodhisattvas are perpetual optimists. You remember that? They're very engaging with the world, with people. So they don't really lose that part. But if they don't engage in meditation on emptiness, they will definitely be exhausted. I spoke about that. The exhaustion of social justice, the exhaustion of working with people. Definitely. The only way not to be exhausted is to meditate on emptiness. So when we meditate on emptiness, on that foundation, and then we generate compassion. So we have this understanding that emptiness, in the way that I explained, it's not some vacuity. It's not even things that don't exist. The traditional Buddhists talk about emptiness in terms of dependent origination, spatially. Temporally, they talk about impermanence. Dependent origination is really about relationship. It's about connection. Impermanence is really pointing to possibilities, right? New beginnings. Now, traditional Indian way of saying things, they tend to use apathetic language. Not this, not that, don't do this, don't do that, in negation. But if we translate it in our own life, we don't necessarily talk that way in our culture. We translate it cataphatically, right? Impermanence is new beginnings, possibilities. Dependent origination, causes and conditions, means relationships. So in the practice of emptiness, it's a practice of seeing things and engage with everyone from that lens of possibilities. You know? So everything's workable. Everyone's workable. That's the contemplation of emptiness. So this is not something intuitive. So it's something that we actually have to cultivate. Right? Theoretically, we understand all things are just constructs of our own mind. On the one hand, on the practice side, just see possibilities. Possibilities. New beginnings. Yeah, that's the practice of emptiness. So on the basis of that, we won't become exhausted. And Vimalakirti goes on. When a bodhisattva has finished regarding them this way, then he thinks to himself, for the sake of living beings, for their sake, I must bring them the Dharma, the teaching, so they become liberated. See? Not for your sake, for their sake. But you may see them as empty. You may see everything as new beginnings, possibilities. Everything is workable, but they may not feel this way. They feel stuck. They feel traumatized. So in order to help them, Vimalakirti said that is true compassion. So it's inseparable from emptiness. And here's the 29 different kind of emptiness that generates the kind of compassion. First one, compassion of tranquil extinction. The reason that's the first one is to ensure that you don't get burned out. Tranquil extinction. Nirvana, freed. All beings are already free. So you help them with that perspective. They don't feel free at all. They feel, I'm on the brink of breakdown. I'm traumatized. I don't know what to do. From your perspective, you're already free. You're already free. And I'm going to help you to be free. There's a Chan expression for that. The expression is selling water by the river. It's like something so obvious, like they can get it themselves, but they don't see the water. So you say, oh, this is good spring water. He's selling spring water next to the spring water. From that perspective, everything's workable. Everything's workable. Every moment, new beginnings. That's compassion. So you help them in that way. Help them to see that way. You see? Second one, compassion. You treat them with a compassion unburning. Unburning. Buddha Dharma typically use the metaphor burning to represent craving and desire, insatiable, sensual desire. So a compassion that's freed from that desire, freed from that craving. Yeah. Why? You know how some people, there's a story in the sutras that the person paints a tiger. A person paints a tiger and then becomes scared by the tiger. A hero would be construct mind. You paint some ice cream, and ooh, I really want that ice cream. It's you just painted it, So you have no craving or grasping for that. You understand things as empty. Not that it's not there. It's there, but it's your construct. You expose, accept, transform, let it go. I'm not going to go through all 29. I'll just read them. If one of these jumps out, and I'll stop. Next one is compassion that is impartial in terms of time. So you don't favor one over the other. You don't start out strong and then give up later. Present, very strong. Future, so soft. Past, present, future, same. Consistent. You're consistent in your practice. Compassion free of contention. Because nothing opposes it. Nothing opposes it. Compassion undualistic. Compassion unfaltering. Compassion firm and durable. Compassion clean and pure. Because all phenomena are already pure. Compassion boundless. Boundless as the empty sky. Infinite. You know, infinite possibilities. Infinite resourcefulness. You don't say, this is not part of my skill set. I haven't learned it yet. Actually, sentient beings, relating with sentient beings, they will tell you what they need. And you will come up with how to help them creatively. Boundless. Boundless. If you say, well, I don't have the skill set, the door is closed. If you practice emptiness, which is possibilities, new beginnings, all you experience is infinite potential, infinite possibilities. See? That's why it's boundless. Relating with people draws out our resourcefulness, right? Creativity. Treats them with the compassion of an arhat who has conquered the thief of desire. Treats them with the compassion of a bodhisattva who brings contentment to all beings. Treat them with the compassion of the thus come one, the Buddha, who has grasped the marks of suchness. Suchness. It's a technical term in Buddhism. It refers to all things as they are formless, without self-nature, and non-empty. Formless because everything is made up of everything else. All beings are made up of everything else. Table is made up of non-table. There's no fixed form. They can change. People's personalities, people's appearances even. So formless. Without self-nature, because they are constructs of your mind. And non-empty does not deny the reality of their suffering. Right? Suchness of things. Okay? Treat them with the compassion, wholly natural, understanding that it is causeless. Oops. Compassion that never despairs. Compassion of the bestowal of the Dharma. Never stinting in its gift. So, generosity. Compassion of observance of the precepts. Compassion of forbearance. This is the 6 perfections. Right? From giving to precepts, to patience, forbearance. Compassion of diligence. And compassion of meditation. Unaffected by what arises. Right? That's meditation. That's a very unique way of explaining meditation. Unaffected. Like what I always say, don't be unfazed by whatever that come up. That's meditation. That's the bodhisattva meditation. And then lastly, compassion of wisdom. And here it says, wisdom one, which always knows the right timing. Wisdom. Yeah. And then compassion of expedient means, suitable for every circumstances. Skillful means. Compassion that hides nothing. Purity of an upright mind. Compassion of a deep searching mind. One free of irrelevant motion. Profound mind. Treat them with a compassion that is unerring, innocent of false and sham. Treat them with a compassion full of peace and delight. And lastly, that was the last one. He says, such is the compassion of Bodhisattva. So, all the resourcefulness of the Bodhisattva, including the 6 perfections, are connected. And that's grounded in the practice of emptiness. Yeah. Usually people talk about emptiness as a non-existence of things, as a philosophical idea, maybe some kind of reasoned analysis, right? Or a state of realization, emptiness. But here, Vimalakirti Sutra, emptiness is a method how to relate to people, right? So the practice of emptiness and how it manifests 29 different compassions. Now, these 29, any one of them points to the ways in which we are just the opposite. For example, compassion that is unerring, free from falsity and sham. But we're constantly making mistakes. Compassion of diligence, compassion of forbearance. So we don't have that. Diligence. We start out strong, maybe we give up later. Compassion that's firm and durable. So now how to do that? How to be firm and durable? Gotta practice emptiness as a foundation regarding how to relate to people. This is actually very practical. Very practical. How many of you are nervous when you have to speak in front of people? Yeah. Practice emptiness. Just try. People are nervous because they're self-conscious. They feel like they're being judged. Right? Yeah. Who's judging? Everyone outside is made up of your own mind. They're all your own construct. Like right now, just take a look at each other. Look at all those different faces. They're all in your brain. Your brain never left the skull. How do you know you're actually seeing them? You don't. Your occipital cortex is producing that. The neuroscientists say that 90% of what we're seeing is produced by your own brain. You only need 10% of what's actually happening outside. You fill in all the data by yourself. The majority of what you're saying, what you're seeing and experiencing are all of your constructs. What are you nervous about? They're all created by you. You look at them and you laugh. Hi. Just close your eyes, ground. It's all good. Right? And you see someone really suffering, you help. Selling water, spring water by the river. No exhaustion. And when you help them, how do you know how to help them? You still have your intellect. You're not dumb. So you observe, you listen closely, you give what you can. You comfort them, support them what you can. And if they feel helped, it's not by you, it's them. They're the one who's telling you what to do. So it's their merit. So you have no pressure. Same thing, if they don't feel helped, you still have no pressure. This is yours. You don't inject a self where there is none. Don't inject a self where there is none. It's just a natural flow of causes and conditions interacting. You respond to your own intellect, kindness, you respond. Once it's done, it's over. Right? They receive help, that's because they want to be helped. Because they're experiencing you from their own projection. They're actually hearing what they want to hear. Nothing to do with you. You go, oh, I'm doing a good job. I saved a lot of people today. No. There's no self. Yet, there's this miraculous functioning. Wisdom. It naturally circulates. Where is this wisdom from? It's from all of your upbringing, all of your resources. Each and every one of you have your own background, knowledge, skill set, right? So when you help all being, you're tapping into that collective wisdom from everyone. It doesn't belong to you. So you have infinite amount of wisdom. It's not possessible. It's already there. It's already theirs in their own constructs. You get this idea? Right? Everyone have their own knowledge, skill sets, perception of things, their intelligence. Right? So when you engage with that selflessly, that will circulate. If they feel helped, it's their wisdom. Right? So you're like a conduit, selfless. And by engaging with them, you learn their wisdom. You see what's present there. It's miraculous. After that, Manjushri continue. How do you practice empathy and love? Whatever benefit the bodhisattva gains, he or she shall share them with all living beings. That's how to practice love and empathy. And then Manjushri says, well, what about sympathetic joy? Vimalakirti says, any way the bodhisattva can aid or enrich others, he views as an occasion of joy and never regrets. So it's just a delight. It's a delight to engage. He sees opportunities. He sees possibilities without regret. Manjushri says, the last one, what do you mean by equanimity? How does a bodhisattva practice equanimity? Vimalakirti says, whatever blessing or good fortune the bodhisattva bestows, he or she expects nothing in return. Equanimity. This is a very unique way of explaining the four immeasurable minds. Right? So this is the Mahayana way. It's just offering, bringing happiness, skillfully engage with compassion and love, without regret. And what the bodhisattva sees is opportunities. Even for people who are criminals. That's a hard one for people to accept. Even for people who are harming others. They too draw out our resourcefulness, our intelligence of how to relate to them. So because of them, the bodhisattva can engage skillfully. Because of each and every one of you have your own proclivities, habit tendencies that draw out the bodhisattva practitioner's way to relate. The reason why the bodhisattva is very flexible, adapting, is because of the practice of emptiness. It just sees possibilities. That's why I say the bodhisattva practitioner is the perpetual optimist. You know. So the reason these four are considered immeasurable, because there's infinite sentient beings, people. There's infinite approaches. And each and every one of them have their own resources, ways of doing things, perspective on things, their own intelligence. Therefore, the bodhisattva are able to engage and allow that to come out. For the difficult people, it's able to work with them skillfully. Right? And that these four immeasurable minds is connected to the four methods of attraction spoken of earlier. Right? Generosity. What are the four attractions? Generosity, kind speech, beneficial act. The fourth one is very important. Practicing wisdom. So it's like my teacher used to say, when you're on a pirate ship, you don't try to be a police officer. You become a pirate. Right? Right. Like when you're among robbers, you're a robber. That's like the bodhisattva saying. So you become one of them. You practice with them. You gain trust. You gain connection. And then you bring the Dharma to them. The four attractions. Now imagine if you go to a group of robbers, pirates, you say, let me tell you all of you what the Dharma is. They'll just kick your butt, right? you won't be, you can't connect with them. So the four methods of attraction is really about making connections. Once you're able to make connections, then you work from the inside out. Even difficult people. So the next talk, I'll begin with the four great vows proper. Right? The four great vows cannot be practiced or even understood if you just see them in isolation. I vow to save all beings. What? How is that even possible? Because sentient beings save themselves. What they'll say. Yeah. Difficult beings too. Yeah. Cut off endless vexations, selfing, othering. To master limitless approaches to Dharma. All these practices. And to realize Buddhahood. So these four vows, I am presenting them in the context of the 15 minds. After the four great vows, we'll talk about wisdom in depth. It's called the 3 gates of liberation. The 3 gates of liberation is a shared teaching in early agamas or nikayas. It mentions them also in the Mahayana. Okay, so we'll conclude the talk tonight. Any questions? Yeah, please.
So the method is to sort of remain non-reactive even when you're sitting. Positive feelings come up, see through it. Unpleasant feelings, same thing. Do we become more stoic in life? Or, I mean, does it become very flat? You know, like somebody, I'm not saying that that's the idea that you're trying to do, but if you're practicing that,
Yeah.
it becomes very difficult to then actually feel
Yeah, that's what
or
Americans
engage.
are always afraid of. Yeah,
Well, in
that's the
martial arts,
question.
though, you see it,
Yeah.
stoicism.
Oh, do I sing flat to you?
No, but you know, I'm
You
unsure.
don't become flat because we practice with great interest, great optimism. So everything becomes opportunity to learn, to share. You have great love for beings. The practice of emptiness allows you not to be exhausted, not to burn out. See? So you're always learning and you're always adapting.
Okay.
Yeah. From the Chan perspective, Chan is like the practice of wonderment. Curiosity. What is it? So in Chan, we have small question, small awakening. Big question, big awakening. No question, no awakening, you know. So that kind of curiosity, questioning mind is very important. So you don't become flat. You don't lose your personality, actually.
At
Yeah.
the monastery, though, I recognize a lot of.
No, that's because you're looking from the outside. I was in the monastery. Every one of them is a character. Every one of them. There's nothing flat about them. And then from the outside, maybe once a week you go see them, or once every blue moon you see them. From the outside, oh, they're so stoic. They're so all kind of personality types there. We don't lose our personality. You know, don't lose your person. Even people who have reached liberation, arhats, they have personality types. You know, now there are people even before they practice, Their personality is just aloof. It's not approachable. When they practice, they still have that. So a lot of people have this misunderstanding of Buddhism that Buddhism is about detachment. The more you practice, the more you become detached. No. Or they have a stereotype of what is a good practitioner supposed to look like. And I'm just going to start to act like that. Nonsense. Nonsense. The Buddha's 10 great disciples, each one of them had their personalities. You don't lose the personality. And there's no stereotype. The stereotype of always stoic, withdrawn. That may be a phase of one's practice. For example, if they're really using the method, they're present on the method. They're not really engaging. So they're using the method. But their personalities will come out. Their personality actually shapes their practice. It colors. That's the spice. Colors their practice. That's the creativity.
Could I rephrase it somewhat? So if there's no suffering, is there also no pleasure?
Sure, there's pleasure. And there's happiness.
It's the same thing, though constructed differently, right?
You still have, if you have personality, you will know happiness. You will know what's pain. But it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick.
Got it.
Yeah. How many of you have this idea that the more you practice, the more you become calm? Yeah. When you're using the method, you may be calm, but your personality, if it's not calm, if you're outgoing, you're not going to become like an introvert, like you change your personality. No, no. Maybe if you're on retreat, you're on the method, you're practicing, you don't bother people, become so chatty. Noble silence. A person who's humorous is still humorous. A person who's already kind of aloof, unapproachable, then that person will probably be unapproachable. A person who is very loving, that person will still be loving. Ananda was like that. Ananda, very kind and very loving. But when he became an arhat, he's still like that. But Mahakashyapa, this guy is just unapproachable. so, when he was an arhat, he was still like that. With all kinds of personalities. You get to keep your personality. Don't be afraid that the practice is supposed to be a certain way. It's just you. Right? A couple of weekends ago, we have Jiryu coming. He edited a book. The name is Becoming Yourself. You just be yourself. You see. All right. Any other questions? Maybe online? Is there? Kyle?
I have a question. Thank you, by the way. I have a question about self-permittance or permittability, however you say that, to meditate, and the barriers that might stand in the way. So, for example, I was reading a book by an indigenous woman, and she was saying uh, giving herself the permittance to write gave her guilt. And I think about this sometimes with meditation in a sort of parallel way,
Okay.
in the sense that, the dishes need to be done or the house needs to be clean. I can't therefore meditate because do I frame it in terms of a necessity, or do I frame it in some other way to permit oneself to be able to meditate? That's the question.
It's a very interesting question. If she permit herself to write and it gave rise to guilt for writing?
Yeah, and her argument was, at least that she's explaining to the reader, is that all of the other women in the village, right, are working, and she's doing
she's
this
writing.
privileged thing she sees as
I
writing,
see.
and I think
Got
in
it.
a simple, yeah.
Yeah. There's no fixed answer to that kind of question because it really depends on context. If there's a fixed answer, then people can use it wrongly. Everyone else is out there doing mindful work, and you say, I'm going to permit myself to sit while all of you little birds go out and do the mindful work. So there's no fixed answer. You just do what needs to be done. Yeah. The principle is, for yourself, think in terms of cause and effect. Not only the cause, not only the effect. For example, if I sit, I'm going to be really happy because I'm just going to sit, right? Not only the effect, just like other people work, so I just work, even though I should be sitting, right? Everyone is sitting. I should be sitting, but I want to support other people. There's people like that, right? So they deny themselves. So you have to think of both the circumstances, what needs to be done, what can be done by you. Right? If I do this, is it going to bring more suffering? Or is it going to bring peace? That's the effect part. From the cause, yeah, I'm going to be really happy. But other people is going to be suffering. So you think you have to balance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Always think, so complex questions like that, circumstances like that, we have to think from both cause and effect and try to find a balance. Okay, anyone online? No? Okay, Will, back there.
I don't have a question, more of a comment on that stoic. I find the practice has helped me less stoic, less aloof, more joyful. I mean, it's changed my life, and for the better. And when I do slip back into some of my negative habitual behaviors, my wife makes a point of sending me to a retreat.
Will, it's time for you for another retreat.
So I go to a lot of them. Anyway, it's just been a positive in all aspects in life changing. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Yes, please. Where's the mic? Corey, you have the mic.
Yeah, so I used to meditate a lot more, and so I've been using it like. Oh, it's not on.
Should push it all the way up. Sometimes it's midway up.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I used to meditate a lot. I'm new to Chan, so I don't know the Chan method. But an issue I had today during my practice was that I was counting my breath, so counting in and out, and thoughts would come up, and I would try to note them, but I felt like I was still able to focus on my breath while also the thoughts coming up.
Yeah.
And it felt like both were happening at the same time, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that, if that's normal or
It's
what to do
normal.
in that situation.
The
Yeah.
mind is used to kind of multitasking, and the mind is used to doing a lot of stuff. So, and it's easy to be engrossed in that. You have your thoughts, you have your method at the same time. So that's a sign. That's a sign that you're in your head. You're top heavy. So what you need to do is, the antidote to that is just relax and just focus on being grounded, like the sense of weight, grounded, feeling in your body, embodied experiencing the breath. Right? Now, once in a while, those things can happen too. Simultaneously do them. The way to counteract that is shelf them. Shelf them. Right? You want to distance yourself from them. You want to still be grounded. What I mean by shelving them is, so unresolved issue, schoolwork, box 1, shelf 1. Girlfriend, box 2, shelf 3. Keep track of them, and then still grounded. So you're not caught up in them. So you systematize them. Box 1, shelf 2. Just keep track, and you're still grounded. Stay with the method, stay with the method, stay with the method. After a while, you're not too caught up with them. And then the simultaneity of method and wandering thoughts will start to diminish. But that's on the basis of being in the body. So that foundation must be there. Otherwise, you're just keeping track of all kinds of stuff. Yeah, you can try that. Okay. All right. Until next time. Okay. Have a good night.